Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I am Ryan Wormeli, joined today by Derek Brown and also by Terrell Furman, my new colleague. And this is our first time doing a show together, Terrell. I'm really excited to be talking with you.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here, Worm. You know, hey, and you weren't the early worm or the early bird to get the worm because me and Debro already did a show together. But I'm glad to finally you got around to asking me and having me on after, somebody canceled on you. And then you went and said, hey, Terrell, can you do it? I said, sure.
Erickson was like, I'm going out of town. I was like, I guess we'll settle for Terrell.
It's Erickson's fault. Yep, it's Erickson's fault.
He's in that part of life where everything, like he's got bachelor parties and weddings every week and all that kind of stuff, at the old age of 30. I remember what that time was like.
I believe he's in China, Maine, as he kept telling us at the expo last week.
How old do you think I am?
I'm so bad at guessing this. I am so bad. Maybe, I was going to say like 27?
I'm in between 34 and 36.
I was going to say in the 20s, but I don't know.
Tell me I'm wrong here, Terrell.
Well, I'm not even acknowledging D-Bro. I'm not even acknowledging D-Bro. He's way off, and I'm actually kind of offended. I'm 28. I'm 28, man.
Oh, I was pretty spot on.
Yeah, he was close.
Away.
I thought you were about to get it.
That's not that far. Okay, so I'm going to tell you a lot of the reality here, Terrell. Once you hit your 30s, it's all the freaking same until you get to 40. Like 30 to 39 is all the same shtick, okay? So I'm sorry you're not in your 30s yet. I apologize immensely.
Terrell, I want credit. I actually almost went even lower. I almost was like 24, 25. I was like, no, I don't think so.
I would have felt offensive too.
I'm
glad you said no right answers here. There's just no right answers here. That's all I'm taking away from
there is one right answer, actually.
Yes, there is technically one answer. All right, well, I'm glad that I got the closer than Debro. That was very important to me. And I'm glad to finally be doing a show with you, Terrell. We're going to be doing a few more here throughout the month and I'm sure into the season and, indefinitely. So I'm excited to, like I said, be chatting with you here. Today's episode is pretty straightforward. We're talking draft or pass on 10 running back sleepers. We're going to name more than 10 names because some of these, I wanted to just kind of include the whole backfield where it's not really clear kind of like who the number one might be, or you might have kind of a personal preference. So we're going to name more than 10, but 10 running backs / running back situations. Are we drafting or passing at cost, where they are right now? Quick reminder for everybody, all of our 2024 consensus rankings and tiers can be found at fantasypros.com/rankings. Also, a quick reminder to get ready for the ultimate fantasy football showdown with the 5th annual Fantasy Pros Fantasy Fest. Join us live on our YouTube channel Monday, August 19th, starting at 3 p.m. Eastern or 12 p.m. Pacific for a 5-hour fantasy football extravaganza like no other. We've got a star-studded lineup of familiar faces, the best fantasy experts from all around the industry coming together to bring you the latest and greatest insights to help you dominate your draft. We've got player rankings, breakouts, sleepers, busts, so much more with Jake Seeley, Jamie Eisenberg, Scott Pianowski, and plenty of others. But here's the best part. You can be part of the action. Join the live conversation and ask your burning questions. Can't make it live? No worries. You can catch all the excitement later on your own time. But trust us, you won't want to miss the live show. So mark your calendars and set those reminders because the Fantasy Pros Fantasy Fest is happening exclusively on our YouTube channel. All right, let's dive in. We're going to start off with one of those aforementioned backfields. And by the way, we're defining running back sleepers as just anybody going outside the top 24 at the position. So we tried to kind of hit on names that people are actually searching for on our site and are talking about as long as they were not in that top 24. So that's kind of how we try to identify these names. And right off the top, kind of the most searched for right now is actually Nick Chubb. So I want to kind of loop in Jerome Ford as well and ask you guys of these two, and you can answer one or the other or both or neither. Are you drafting or passing? Debra, I'll start with you on Nick Chubb kind of / Jerome Ford.
I'm passing on Chubb. I will say I have bumped him up in my ranks a little bit with the news and the workouts and things like that over the last few weeks. So he is currently up. I bumped up Chubb to RB 40, but I've still got to rank Jerome Ford ahead of him. I've got him at RB 35. And so I'm probably not going to get a lot of Chubb in drafts, but I do want to circle Jerome Ford's name when I am on the clock because what he could have that early down role. He could be the guy to begin the season, and we don't know when Nick Chubb is coming back at this point. So really it could just not be early season. Who knows? It could be the entire season. I'm not going to rule that out. And I'm not saying that I don't want to see Nick Chubb back stiff-arming people into other dimensions. I do. But Jerome Ford, I think we're also sleeping on the upside, and I want to draft him as much as possible. Like when he was the starter last year, RB20 in fantasy points per game. So give me Jerome Ford here.
So interestingly, in ECR, Ford is one spot ranked ahead of Chubb. He's 5 spots lower in ADP. So Chubb is being drafted higher than Ford, but Ford is just barely ranked ahead of Chubb. By the way, that ADP for Chubb is RB30, and then Ford Ford is down, like I said, lower than that. So I will not be drafting Chubb there. I will just say right off the bat.
RB30 is spicy, man. I wouldn't even have thought he was that high. That's
you
crazy.
Imagine like in home leagues too, as we get more of those into the data, like people just see the name and, maybe he bounced back. The injury was early enough. Terrell, what are you doing with this backfield?
So I would love to get Nick Chubb, but he's just never there when I'm looking to draft him. I'm always grabbing somebody else. But I would love to have this backfield shored up because I would draft both. I would. I just can't draft Chubb where he's at and with all the other talent going around him. But I think this backfield is going to be really good. If you are a Nick Chubb believer, I think Nick Chubb is going to be great when he gets back because this offensive line is now intact and healthy. And they're projected to be one of the best offensive lines in football this year. And we saw what happened when you put a very good running back like a Jerome Ford or like Nick Chubb behind a really good offensive line. Great things happen. Look at what DeAndre Swift did last year for the Eagles. So I just think that this is a really, really good spot for both of these running backs. I'm 100% drafting Ford. I can't get Chubb at ADP right now. Now, if he falls to me, and maybe I'm in a weird draft where nobody wants to take a chance on Chubb, then I 100% will do that because I think when he comes back, then Chubb is going to take over. You're going to have possibly a league winner when it comes down to championship time.
Yeah, Debra, to that point that Terrell just made, like, are you, when you are fading Chubb to the degree that you are, Debra, is it because you think he will like not be back right away or that he will be ineffective when he's on the field?
A little bit of both. I think that considering his age, and I know we've seen Nick Chubb be one of arguably the best rushers of the football in the NFL for some time. So can I make you a really good narrative or a case that, okay, he might not be elite, but could he still be above average? Sure. I just worry that after the horrific injury that he sustained at his age, and he's currently not 24, 25, 26 years old, that I don't know what he's going to look like once he gets back. But the other part about this is how much, say, Cleveland is really going to push, like, okay, say they have a winning record. They're pushing for the playoffs. Does that strike you as a team that's going to, and Jerome Ford has had weeks and weeks and weeks where he has played well as the starter. Does that strike you as a team that is more willing to push Chubb as soon as he comes back or even towards the end of the regular season if they're staring down the playoffs and say, yeah, sure, like Nick Chubb, let's give him 15, 17 carries a week? I don't think it is. So I just worry about all things Nick Chubb, whether it's the health, whether it's the effectiveness, whether honestly even the volume that Cleveland is willing to give him based off of where they're at in the season or where he's at health-wise.
Let's go to the next running back here. And Terrell, I'll start with you because I already know how Debra feels about this guy. So I want to hear you first. Jonathan Brooks. And I will just say Debra was all over him in rookie drafts this year, talking about him on the Dynasty show. So like I said, I know where Debra stands. Terrell, Jonathan Brooks, obviously coming off an injury last year, but you're a really talented running back. We'll have the opportunity, it would seem, once he's actually healthy and on the field. Are you drafting or passing Brooks this year?
I'm passing, but I'm only passing because there's a bunch of people that are drafting at that spot, and I can't get there. I just can't get there with Carolina's offense right now, and just believing that a running back in a Carolina team that has shown me in years past. Now this is a new regime, so maybe it's different, but they haven't been able to commit to anybody. It's been a little here, there, everywhere with them, and I think they have a bunch of talented running backs on the roster that, hey, if somebody's slacking, somebody's going down, it's kind of running back by committee, and somebody else will pick up. And so I think next year, like if this was Dynasty, I would love him. Next year, I think that's the chance where they see the flashes this year and he ends up taking over that backfield going forward next year. But this year, I, for one, just haven't been able to sell myself on it.
RB33, overall 92nd in ADP, Debra. Again, I know you were really excited in Dynasty. Are you drafting him in redraft?
I am. I'm drafting Jonathan Brooks in redraft, and I feel like I understand he's not going to play. We've gotten the news he's not going to play for the first 3 or 4 weeks. That's fine. That's not what you're hoping for if you're drafting Jonathan Brooks, or you're hoping for what his full season outlook ends up being for 2024. For me, for Jonathan Brooks, that's the player that you want to draft, and you're expecting, okay, maybe he starts out slow and it's middle of the season. Like he's an RB3 when he comes back, and maybe he's splitting a little bit of the work. But like the other thing about it is, can we see him be a workhorse down the stretch? And I think we can't rule that out, considering timing of his ACL, the fact that it was a clean ACL. It wasn't something where we had LCL, other ligaments, or it was horrible involved here. And I'm not just totally dismissing a torn ACL, but I think that the recovery from those has become more streamlined. He's a really young player. He was super effective. And I know we didn't get testing metrics out of him, but I mean, just looking at the numbers, we're talking about a prospect that last year was 21st in yards per route run and yards after contact. He was top 10 in elusive rating. So, looking at him as a prospect, I think that he would have tested well, if not extremely well, if he'd got a chance to do so. So all the factors are there for him to come back and probably surprise people coming off the ACL. And as far as Carolina goes, I think last year we saw the basement for this franchise, for this team. I'm not saying they're going to be a top 5, top 10 scoring offense, but Dave Canellis being there, running a better offensive system. Also, with the talent that they've brought in, I'm not telling you that like all these players, like we have a top 12 wide receiver in the NFL, all that kind of stuff, or even the offensive line is going to be that good. But I think we saw the basement for this team last year. And heck, with that team, Chuba Hubbard on plenty of weeks was an RB2. So can Jonathan Brooks be that this year? Maybe have more ceiling if he truly is that guy, and this team is playing better football than we saw last year? Yeah, I want to get Jonathan Brooks on a lot of teams.
Yeah, I think the Dave Canales thing does make me a little more optimistic about the possibility of him being a workhorse once he is fully healthy, and their willingness to commit to somebody like that. Do you think Terrell, that Brooks could be the type of player that you let somebody else draft and then, hey, they get other injuries elsewhere, they need to make space, they drop him because he's injured and ineffective early, and then you try and pick him up for like a stretch run?
Or I'll make a low ball offer when I see he's getting ready to come back, or maybe he does come back and doesn't look as good. That's somebody that I may be looking to trade target later in the year. But just that capital, like Jerome Ford is going later, and I think I want Jerome Ford more than Jonathan Brooks, just saying of how, again, you talked about it, RB20 last year, and I think he could have a solid workload even in whenever Nick Chubb comes back. So it's just hard for me to look at Jerome Ford and Jonathan Brooks and not be interested with Jerome Ford when, one, I think that the Cleveland Browns have by far a way better offensive line, and I still question the Carolina offense that, yeah, they may not be as bad as they were last year, but they could be double as good as they were last year, and that's still pretty bad.
It's a great point. Devro, just quickly, same thought on like maybe trying to add him later on into the season rather than drafting him?
Yeah, I think that's totally fine. I mean, I think like you're looking at, you want to be ahead of the curve, and whether it's, you're tuning in and asking these questions on our live streams this upcoming season. Like, I think that people need to be ahead of the curve and asking those kind of questions and looking at players, because we kind of get the idea, okay, they're coming back. Okay, well, he's going to get a slow ramp up. That's the time, kind of like with Jonathan Taylor last year. If you wanted him when he came back, you need to put that offer out like a week or two before then, because then people kind of wake up, they hit the smelling salts, and they're like, oh, why did I trade him away? So that's exactly the same thing for Jonathan Brooks.
All right, guys, it's time to throw another shrimp on the barbie. Get in on all the UFC 305 action live from the land down under at DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of UFC. The middleweight title is on the line for the main event, but the card is stacked full of rip snorter blokes and Sheilas. And speaking of stacked, if you're new to DraftKings, listen up. New customers bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code FantasyPros. That's code FantasyPros for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. UFC 305, it's going to be a ripper of a good time. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Debro, I did that read yesterday, and I was like, I'll take it easy on the accent. I'll just do it normal this time. And Fitz and Joe were very disappointed. So I figure it's my last chance. I'll bring the accent back out.
Well, it's funny that this comes into play in this show, because I was doing the show with Welsh in the Discord yesterday. He didn't do the accent, and I felt like something was missing. I was like, kind of like when you somebody's cooked you a wonderful dinner, and you're like, you take the first bite, and you're like, this needs something. This needs like salt or some other type of spice. I don't know, but it's missing something. Yes. That's exactly how I felt when Welsh was reading that, going through the entire thing, and there was no Australian accent. I was like, oh,
it's hard because like I said, I did it without the accent yesterday. It's hard to read a line like blokes and Sheilas without saying it. And it like just sounds weird in an American accent. So I figured I'd give one last run through with the Australian accent as best I could.
Sheilas.
Yes, exactly. All right, next running back here, DeAndre Swift, who was just outside that top 24 ranking. He's RB 25, but he still is eligible for the way we're approaching this. His ADP is actually higher than that, but in terms of the rankings, he's outside of the top 24. And Debra, I'll start with you on Swift. Are you drafting him as what essentially would be like a back end RB2, or are you passing on Swift?
Nope, I'm not drafting DeAndre Swift. And this all comes down to, what do we see out of him last year? I think he's appropriately priced. I have no problem with that. But Chicago's backfield was a total headache last year. I mean, they rotated through a few different running backs. You never know who to start out of that. And it didn't matter whether Khalil Herbert, who's still there, by the way, was blowing it away as far as efficiency metrics. Didn't matter to that coaching staff. And the same coaching staff is back yet again. And I feel like this is kind of one of those things where it's like, okay, we're going to follow the money. We're hoping the volume happens. And this feels very Miles Sanders-esque of last year, where there are other talented backs on this team, and they're going to cut into the workload. And I think we're also giving DeAndre Swift a little bit too much credit. Now, I have him as RB25 in my ranking. So I'm with consensus on that. I kind of want to bump him down a little bit because, I mean, last year, that's expecting him to reproduce what he did last year. And everybody said, like, oh, well, if you look at the full season finishes, he was higher than that. Dude, after you take out those two monster weeks he had in week 2 and 3, I mean, he was the RB25 in fantasy points per game from that point on, averaging only 72.4 total yards. And he sucked as far as a tackle breaker. Like, we're talking about a player that was outside the top 25 running backs last year in both missed tackles forced per attempt and yards after contact per attempt. No, I don't want to draft DeAndre Swift because, much like in the preseason, week 1, we saw this worm. We were sitting in Canton and watching part of the game. They got down the goal line. Khalil Herbert was getting some carries down there, not DeAndre Swift. And I know all the Bears fans are going to say, well, DeAndre just had a huge play. He was probably gassed and stuff. Herbert got a bunch of carries down there in the red zone. You tell me DeAndre Swift didn't have enough gas left in the tank to come back on the field to get one of those shots at possibly scoring? Yeah. No, I'm letting somebody else fall on that sword.
Yeah, we were watching together. I think I was eating the third of my like 5 breakfast burgers I had that weekend in Canton. It was all and they were all delicious. 64th overall. Like, I'm kind of with you. Like, positionally, I think around 25 is a totally reasonable ranking, but 64th overall in ADP. I'm never the guy who's click and draft on Swift in that range. He would need to fall for me to be interested. Terrell, how are you approaching Swift this year?
Yeah, I mean, I'm the same way. I'm not drafting him, and not to echo the numbers that Debro put out there, but he's a between the 20s runner. Like, that's really what they kind of work with him. Between the 20s, they use him to get the big play into the red zone, and then they go in there and they trust guys like Khalil Herbert, and who I think they're going to trust a lot more this season, and got some burn with the starters in Roschon Johnson. And so this is a really, really deep room. And if DeAndre Swift, out of all of them, is the one that I'm more concerned about with injury, I'm more concerned about them just pushing him off as a pass catcher because he makes plays in the passing game. So, like, yeah, he could be just a pass catcher on the outside, and that will be good for fantasy, but not at this price. Like, I need somebody that has a little bit more of the workload, and I just can't see myself. I'm actively trying to trade DeAndre Swift in a dynasty league right now. I'm not having any luck right now. Clearly, they're watching the shows and they understand that I'm not in on them, but I don't want any parts of DeAndre Swift. I really don't.
I think there's a very similar case for DeAndre Swift and Terrell, the usage that you highlighted there, where we could be looking at basically Chicago's version of James Cook, where it's like, okay, he gets volume, but where the heck are the touchdowns, dude? So I'm with you. I'm totally with you. And Worm, to your point, I've got DeAndre Swift. You said he's at, what, 64th overall, right?
In ADP, not in ECR, in ADP.
Yeah. And I've got him at 81st. So I'm not going, and people fall in my ranks are not going to get a lot of DeAndre Swift.
I was going to say,
so many other options. Like, just look at Caleb Williams and how good he is in the passing game and pushing the ball downfield already. Like, he has so many options to throw the ball to the tight end, to all three wide receivers. Like, that'll eat up into whatever passing game works. So if DeAndre Swift goes and has a game where he rushes for 80 yards, maybe catches 2 balls, like, that's okay. That's fine. But if he's not scoring the touchdowns, he's not jumping that tier that everybody wants him to jump.
I totally agree. And Debra, I'm in the same spot with, like, I've got him at RB27, so it's a couple spots lower, but not that crazy. But I've got him in the mid 80s overall. So I'm you know, if he's going in the 60s, I will not have him on many rosters, if any. Let's go to another.
He's safe.
Yeah.
I think he's a safe running back, but I don't think that the upside is not there for me.
It is, you know, it's worth mentioning that he was the first guy signed a free agency. Like, they wanted to bring him on, so maybe they're going to be a little more, you know, aggressive in using him than we kind of anticipate. But, you know, we'll see. Fair,
but if you also watched all the Hard Knock stuff, or which I'm losing. We have so many like television programs now or streaming programs where now we're like it's following certain teams. If you watch everything about the Giants, with Saquon Barkley, also the Bears were in on Saquon. So I think he was the fallback option, personally.
Let's go to another kind of combined backfield here. It's Tony Pollard and Tyjae Spears, the Titans backfield, obviously. In terms of the rankings, Pollard is RB27 and Spears is RB31. In terms of ADP, Spears is RB35 and Pollard is RB27. So a reasonable gap there. I mean, I should say a sizable gap there. Terrell, do you like either of these guys where they're going right now?
No, I don't. And it has nothing to do, well, it has a little bit. Tony Pollard's a former Cowboy, so I'm just, that already has a stench on you. But it really, really has nothing to do with more of the talent and just more of, I do not believe that this coach nor this offensive coordinator care about the running back position in Tennessee. I think that, of course, you play football, you have to run the ball. They're going to do it. But they don't get into the upper echelon of taking this team to the next level unless Will Levis gets them there. Will Levis has the chance to be the Ryan Fitzpatrick, Jameis Winston pseudo type of quarterback that's going to gunsling. I mean, look at what he did in his first NFL game. He threw 4 touchdowns. Come on. And Callahan saw that when he took this job. He said, I can work with that guy. He went and hired an offensive coordinator that says, hey, Nick Colts, we can work with this guy. We can get him going. And so, yeah, I think that everything that I've seen has just said that, yeah, the running back room is kind of second to the passing game in this offense, and they're going to be looking to go down the field, big plays. And so I don't think either one of these two backs, if there was just one of them, I think they'd be rosterable. But the fact that they're splitting the backfield, I think they're going to eat into the already short production that I think the two of them are going to have. And then it's not going to be worth it.
Debra, what do you think? Because I know, like, for me, I really like guys that Pollard is under the profile of, which is who we really liked, and then they weren't really good in year one after an injury, and now they're another year removed. I also kind of like the fact that it's a shared backfield because we saw him, that's when he excelled, when he was uber efficient, when he was sharing the backfield with Zeke in Dallas. So I'm like very intrigued by Pollard, and I do think he should be ranked higher than Spears. Having said that, I like Spears going, 8 running backs later and 20 picks later than Pollard. So at cost, I'd be more interested in Spears, even if I like Pollard better. How are you approaching it?
I'm drafting both of them. I'm right in line with consensus. I've got Pollard at RB27. I got Spears a tick above at RB33. But I look at this like, would we be so shocked? And I know that like there are differences between these two teams. And yes, to hit this type of level, Will Levis is going to have to be a lot better than I probably give him credit for, because I'm not a Will Levis believer or stan. But could this team, if they outperform expectations, and this backfield more specifically, could this backfield just be the discount version of the Detroit Lions and what we get out of them. I think it's possible. And I think both of these players are incredibly talented. And yes, and I don't own this. This is not my bias about Tony Pollard. Yes, I misgivings and missteps last year. But the other thing about Tony Pollard is, yes, did I not equate enough of, okay, this injury that he sustained the previous year walking into last year, could that linger more? Didn't give enough credit to that. But what do we see out of Pollard towards the back half of the season, weeks 11 through 18? He, amongst 44 qualifying backs, he was 15th in yards after contact per attempt. So now you give him a full offseason to get the burst back. Now he's going to be back working in a committee backfield. He's not going to be asked to get 20, 25 touches. So hopefully we get more of the explosive element back for Tony Pollard. But the same thing with Tyjae Spears. Both of these guys are just electricity. They're lightning in a bottle. Like Spears was just amazing. He was top 15 in basically every efficiency and tackle breaking metric you could pull up and in the pass game. So for both of these backs, really it comes down to what do you believe about this offense and this team? I think both of them are incredibly efficient. So you look at both of these players, they don't need 250 touches to really pay off their ADPs because they're going to make the most out of whatever volume they're given in this offense. And if this offense outperforms, we could see both of these guys finish as low-end RB2s. I wouldn't be surprised by that. It is a projection, but I want to be drafting both of them because the other part about this, if one of them separates from the other back, like right now we're playing the game of we don't know how it's going to shake out. What if it shakes out that one of these guys becomes the clear lead or takes like a 60-40, 65-35 lead on the other back? One of these guys could easily be like a top 15 running back if that is the case. So I want to have equity in both of them in drafts because if one of them does separate, they could be a difference maker this year.
Terrell, is there a point in drafts where if you get enough of a discount and these guys are falling that you are interested, or are you just kind of avoiding entirely?
Tyjae Spears. I think Tyjae Spears and can fall enough where I'm getting a discount, but there's a guy that's going around the place of Tony Pollard that I think we're going to talk about him later, but I think I just have to pull the trigger on him first before I try Tony Pollard.
Anybody who knows me knows there's basically nothing in the world I love more than going to baseball games all summer long. In fact, I've already made plans to attend not one, not two, but all three O's games out here in Denver when they play the Rockies at the end of this month. And to make sure I get the best seats for those games at the best price, I turned to Game Time. With killer last minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. I'll be planning ahead for the O's series, of course, but one of my favorite things about Game Time is the last minute deals. You can save up to 60% off buying last minute for not just sports, but concerts, comedy, theater, and more. I'll be headed to a concert at Red Rocks this month too, and you can be sure I'll be checking out Game Time's deals. Two other features that I love for how much it takes the frustration out of ticket buying are Game Time seat views, showing your view from the seat before you buy, and all-in pricing, so I know the total upfront with no hidden fees. Game Time is simple to use, but more importantly, the app gives me all the information I need to make an easy ticket purchase. So this summer, take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code FantasyPros for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code FANTASYPROS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, fellas, next running back up is Javonte Williams. Terrell, I'll start with you. Are you drafting or passing on Javonte?
I'm passing, but it's no fault of Javonte Williams. It's just the fact that everybody else is drafting him too high. Like, I just think they're drafting him too high, and he's somebody that I thought could be a little bit more of a sleeper this year because everybody is so off of the Javonte Williams train. And I think, you talked about it, you made a very good point earlier. He's probably one of those players I'd be targeting maybe later mid-season and as a trade target because last season, I don't fault anybody in this Broncos offense. They literally were they were destined to fail because the head coach wanted them to fail so he could get the quarterback up out of there. He didn't have any room to get the touchdowns. He didn't really have any room to get the usage. He constantly put the ball in Russell Wilson's hand to prove that he's not a good quarterback so that he could ship him out of town and not catch any backlash. And now the only thing that I could see going up for the Broncos is the fact that these are now all Sean Payton's guys. These are the guys he believe in. You saw Bo Nix in the preseason game. He gave him every opportunity to succeed. Every single opportunity that Bo Nix needed to succeed, Sean Payton gave it to him. And I think if Bo Nix starts as quarterback, even though I don't believe in Bo Nix as a quarterback at all, Sean Payton is a good enough coach where he's going to highlight his strengths and make him look a lot better than what he is and make this offense start to flow. And so that gives me hope for Javonte Williams in the touchdown department, where I think he could actually look a little bit better and they start giving him the ball around the goal line again. So I see the promise there, but he's just too high. Like I would actually take Jonathan Brooks over Javonte Williams right now, even though I think both of them, again, are trade targets for me in the season.
D-Bro, I know that you are a big fan of Jaleel McLaughlin. Are you still willing to, even with that fandom, draft Javonte Williams? RB31, by the way, 91st overall, or are you passing on Javonte?
I'm drafting Javonte, and if you would have asked me this question a few weeks ago, I would have told you no. But going into training camp and stuff, and the big thing about Javonte, I was like, man, I just don't know if he ever gets the juice back. I loved him as a prospect. Yes. I was all over Javonte as a prospect, one of my favorite running backs to watch and evaluate over the last few years. And it really comes down to like that knee injury that he sustained. I was like, I just don't know if he ever gets it back. But all of the buzz out of training camp has been incredibly positive for Javonte Williams. And I think one of these guys, and I'm been incredibly high on Jaleel McLaughlin the entire offseason, but I'll zoom out and I will give some credence to Javonte Williams if he does reclaim, and I'm not saying everything, but 85% of his tackle breaking ability before, because he's lost weight, he looks good in camp. One of these running backs from this team is going to be an awesome, amazing value. And with the positive buzz and talk out of camp, I'm willing to bump Javonte Williams, and I have in my ranks. Like right now, I've got him at RB32. I'm within striking distance. He's RB29. Worm, you said he's 91st overall. Is that right?
In ADP.
And I've bumped him up. Like I've got him at 88th overall. So I'm firmly, if people follow my ranks for drafts, they're in striking distance to get exposure to Javonte Williams. And I want them to, because again, there is going to be pass catching volume in this backfield. And if this team, again, outperforms expectations, and I know expectations are incredibly low, or if Sean Payton does what he's done over years and years and years, and he runs a ton of the red zone offense, even if they aren't a top prolific scoring offense, if he runs a ton of the red zone offense through this backfield, one of these guys is going to absolutely smash. So I want exposure to not only McLaughlin, but Javonte Williams as well.
I think he sold me. I was on the fence.
That's a deep right
I do like Javonte Williams. I do love Javonte Williams. Like I really do. Like it's just.
I was surprised when you let off with I don't want to draft him.
Another guy who's another year removed from the injury.
It's the pain, and sometimes you gotta have short term memory loss, and it's the pain. But again, that offense was doomed to fail last year. Like doomed. The head coach doesn't believe in you and doesn't want you to succeed. You're not going to succeed. Now with the Sean Payton that's locked in, oh my gosh, I really want to be on the Javonte Williams train.
I was looking at my ranks to see where I had him at, Terrell, and I hear like you let off the case of like I don't want to draft him. I'm not really feeling it. And then like I'm listening to as I'm looking to see where I had him ranked, I'm hearing you give the case, and I'm like, I feel like Terrell's talking himself into Javonte Williams. I feel like I'm hearing it live on
it's
air.
So good. Like just looking at some names around Austin Ekeler, I would love Javonte Williams over Austin Ekeler. I would. Sure. Jerry Warren.
Don't besmirch Jalen Warren. It won't even be me. Erickson's going to come for you, okay?
That's 50. Okay, 50-50. Zach Moss is somehow going above him. I have no idea how that's happening. Yeah. I would take.
We're going to get to that backfield, but no.
Yeah, that is on the sheet. Let me stop teasing ahead.
Well, there are a couple of names coming up that are in this range that I am really curious if we would have Javonte over. I'll just to put about on Javonte conversation specifically, D-Bro, what like ceiling? He becomes the clear RB1 for a Sean Payton offense that's actually trying again, to Terrell's point. Like, is the ceiling an RB1 season? Is it high end RB2? Like, what's best case scenario here?
15 to 20. I think is probably probably RB 15, like sniffing around that top 15 is probably the best case scenario. I think the median probably, if he gets most of the work and this offense kind of outperforms, then you're drafting an RB3, but you're getting a solid RB2 weekly.
But I also think that Sean Payton also could be a fraud, and he just sucks. And this offense is terrible, and he is like a RB 0, like terrible. Like he could he could lose his job. That's the also part that scares me. He could very well much lose his job to Jaleel McLaughlin.
I'm more of a Sean Payton truther than you are. Then
I live out here in Denver, and if that is the case, Terrell, I don't think the fan base would survive. I think they would just be done and there'd be no coming back from that one because they don't really have a choice.
But nobody wants to say it. There is a world of possibility that Sean Payton just doesn't have the juice anymore, and it was the New Orleans rub. That is a very real possibility. I can't prove that he was tanking the offense last year, but I assume that he was. If he wasn't, and he's really as bad as that was last year, then
I'll say this. I'll say this just to wrap a bow on this. I don't think Russell Wilson was actually running Sean Payton's offense last year. I think Russell Wilson was probably the worst fit for a Sean Payton offense that you could possibly ever dream up. And that's why Payton was like, oh no. It's almost like the club time where you're just like, you ain't got to go home, but you got to get up out of here. Yeah. Bye, Russ. Bye.
Yeah. All right. Let's get to the Bengals backfield. We kind of referenced it with Zach Moss, but I'm going to kind of include both Zach Moss and Chase Brown by and large. And this is largely driven by Pat Fitzmaurice being a huge Chase Brown guy. This podcast has largely been Chase Brown over Zach Moss. I'm curious if you guys come down the same way. By ADP, Zach Moss, RB 26, 81st overall. That's just too high. Chase Brown is in the late 30s. He's 111th overall. I think that those will come closer together as we get later into August and more drafts are done. I feel like the conversation is more pro Chase Brown now than maybe it was early in the offseason. We were kind of out in front of that. At least Fitz certainly was. So at cost, to me, this one's pretty easy. Terrell, I'll start off with you. Do you like Zach Moss or Chase Brown at cost? Are you drafting or passing?
No, I don't like either one. And I know I sound like negative Nancy here because there's a lot of running backs around this range I'm not interested in. And I'm probably looking wide receiver during this range. But it's a lot of, I think that this offense and how they profiled in the past, when it doesn't work out and the running game doesn't get going and we're focusing on Jamar Chase. We're focusing on the tight ends. We're going to nickel and dime this down the field until we get the big play. And we're going to run with Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow's going to be our offense, and he's going to be able to carry this through. I don't think Zach Moss is really that guy. I think he's catching a little bit of the, hey, he made it work under a really good offensive plan under Shane Steichen in Indianapolis. And then now you're going to Cincinnati thinking that you're going to get that same rub, and the rub is not there. It only worked in Indianapolis. It was only good in Indianapolis. It wasn't good in Buffalo. I had a terrible time in Buffalo, and we're going to have a terrible time. Matter of fact, you probably don't need to be all the way up there. You just need to stay out of outside cold weather, go get in a dome or somewhere safe. But I'm just not with it in Zach Moss, and Zach Moss being there takes away from me having any hope for Chase Brown.
Debro, what do you think?
I do not want to draft any Zach Moss, and I will draft Chase Brown. I'll look at Zach Moss, and I've said this on previous shows, but if you're just now tuning back into redraft season, hi, welcome. Zach Moss, I think, is this year's Alexander Madison. I want nothing to do with him. I think if you're looking at any player that could take over the backfield, it is Chase Brown. And right now, refresh my memory here because I'm getting older, and the expo I'm still licking my wounds there. Where are they at overall? Because I want to say, not only do I have Chase Brown ranked ahead of Zach Moss, but I want to say I'm ahead of consensus on Brown and below consensus on Zach Moss. Where are they at?
You said overall, not among running backs?
Yeah, overall.
Zach Moss, 81st in ADP. And by the way, this data can be found on FantasyPros.com. We have consensus ADP data from multiple sites. But Zach Moss, 81st overall. Chase Brown, 111th.
Oh, so
30 spots lower.
I'm a little bit above market, almost around above market. On Chase Brown, I have him at 102nd, and Zach Moss, I have him hugged up right next to him at 103rd. So again, if you're following my ranks, you will not be getting much Zach Moss, but you will be drafting some Chase Brown. And that's kind of how I want to attack the backfield, man. Like, I have come around, and I will own this. I was not high on Chase Brown entering the training camp season, draft season and stuff, but we have to be liquid and adjust to training camp news. So if we would have come out and what I kind of thought we were going to get was Chase Brown as a handcuff. He's working some with the ones, mostly with the twos. It's probably Zach Moss's backfield, although he's not very talented. The way that it's come out in camp is, no, they are splitting reps with the first team. Chase Brown's getting a lot of run with the first team. And for me, that points to, okay, then if they're already giving Chase Brown a ton of run with the first team, then really this just becomes a foot race and a bet on talent. Who is the most talented back? And I think that is Chase Brown by a mile over Zach Moss. We've seen enough years and iterations of Zach Moss in places and situations where it's like, okay, could he take over a backfield? Okay, that upside was there on multiple years for different teams, and you didn't see it until last year. So kudos to him for getting the bag and getting paid. Love it for Zach Moss. But am I going to fall into that trap for 2024? No way.
I'm not opposed to wanting Zach Moss on your roster. I think it's a worthy gamble to say, like, maybe we are like kind of a little over our skis with Chase Brown. Somebody is going to have rushing touchdown opportunities in this offense, and maybe it does end up being Zach Moss. I get that. I just think the cost disparity is too much, and it's like super unwarranted. I mean, 30 spots difference overall between them. In our rankings, like in ECR, they're RB32 and RB34, so they're much closer. And I think that's more reflective of how the market is kind of playing out. But right now, in ADP, the gap is just too wide. Like, I just don't.
That gap, I agree with you. That gap needs to change, and honestly, it needs to flip.
And I currently have Moss ahead of Brown. I think I'm probably going to flip that. But they're very, very close to each other. That again, it's the disparity in their rankings that is really crazy. We've got one more kind of shared backfield that I wanted to hit on here before we wrap up with a couple of final running backs. And it's Brian Robinson and Austin Ekeler. Once again, I know exactly where Debro stands on this. Terrell, I'm curious where you stand on Brian Robinson versus Austin Ekeler, and if you're drafting or passing, one of them, both of them, or neither of them.
I am drafting Brian Robinson and I am fading Austin Ekeler. First of all, he's still the RB1. They brought him in and he's still RB1. By all accounts, I haven't heard anybody ever say that he is no longer the RB1. Austin Ekeler went and he got a taste of the limelight and what it was like to be RB1 on a team. And then everybody also remembered, wait, there was a reason why Melvin Gordon was ahead of you. Like, there was a reason for that. You're very, very good at this number 2 role for us, and we should probably keep you there. When we get around the goal line and we need somebody to punch it in, I'm not looking your way. I'm looking to Brian Robinson, who through weeks 1 through 12 last season was the RB5. RB5 through weeks 1 through 12 before he got hurt. RB5. I mean, there's really no, I think Brian Robinson is a league winner because this offense is going to be better. The defense is going to put them in very good situations. I believe in Jayden Daniels. And hey, maybe Dan Quinn gets that second stint as a coach, and that is the better stint for him where he actually puts it all together, because I think if this offense gets around the goal line, it's going to Brian Robinson, and he has the talent to punch it in a bunch of times this season.
Debro, anybody watching on YouTube could see your reaction and how gleeful you were that Terrell said he was drafting Brian Robinson and not Austin Ekeler. And by the way, it is a clean sweep. I totally agree. Robinson is one of my favorite targets this year. ECR is currently RB28, and it's like, I think that's a little low. It's not like the most outlandish ranking, but ADP has not caught up to that. RB34 in ADP. I think that'll continue to rise, but he's behind Austin Ekeler in consensus ADP right now, and that's just wrong. Like Robinson is the guy you want in my and like maybe there's a world where it's like, okay, maybe we're kind of shutting the door on Ekeler a little too early after one bad year, but Robinson is good. Like I would just rather have him.
Robertson is very, very good. I do not understand what else he has. Like, we've seen preseason work. He's been the clear one. I don't know what else we need to see out of Brian Robinson. Like last year, He was a top 24 running back. Let me say it again, people, because again, ECR and ADP has not caught up. Some people are still drafting Austin Ekeler over Brian Robinson Jr. It makes zero freaking sense. He's not going to be the goal line back. That's Brian Robinson Jr. You're giving too much passing down work to Austin Ekeler. Again, Brian Robinson Jr. is better in the passing game than anybody gives him credit for. He was top 12 in pass blocking grade last year and yards per route run. He was also top 10 in first downs per route run. So the sticky metrics that tell you, okay, who is a good receiving back? Brian Robinson Jr. Check, check, check. So why are you taking that work away from Austin Ekeler and besmirching his name and disrespecting him as an RB3? It makes absolutely zero sense. And yes, I went back to this and I was like, I know Anthony Lynn is on this coaching staff. Is he the running backs coach or what is he doing here? Because this also factors in, boys. Austin Ekeler was not the goal line back for the Chargers whenever Anthony Lynn was also at the controls and making some of those decisions, dude. Anthony Lynn just pulled up the picture of the Commanders coaching staff. Let's see what role Anthony Lynn has. Run game coordinator and running backs coach. So who do you think he's going to have on the freaking field when they get inside the 5 and they get inside the 10? It's going to be Brian Robinson Jr. He's a top 24 back in my ranks. Has been, remains my RB23. Yes, I absolutely agree. He is a league winner. Professional transition as well as foreshadowing. There is going to be a top 12 league winners video dropping on Fantasy Pros YouTube channel pretty soon. And you better believe Brian Robinson Jr. is going to be in it.
We in the biz call that a tease. Thank you, Debro, for that. While you were talking, I had him RB26 while you were talking. I moved him into my top 24. I was like, I can't have him outside RB2 range. And again, RB26 was already higher than consensus by a couple spots, but it's just too low. Like I just
would it be surprising? And I guess maybe a little bit with the mobility of Jayden Daniels. But if Brian Robinson Jr. had this crazy touchdown year, something similar to a Jamal Williams, who still had DeAndre Swift in the backfield with him, I wouldn't be surprised.
Alfred Morris says hi.
Stop saying that name. Do not say
Washington,
that name.
You know, the Jayden Daniels RG3 comparison, Brian Robinson.
You got to say it 3 times in the mirror. You got to say it 3 times. I only did it twice. Okay.
Oh, no.
Deaver, just quickly, because again, he's been such a big name in fantasy for a while. Is there a range where you would draft Ekeler if he's falling, or are you just no interest?
I'm just fading him. I don't see the outside of injury to Brian Robinson Jr. I don't see the upside for Ekeler. And here's the other thing. What if Brian Robinson Jr. were to go down and it's still Austin Eckler's role doesn't change? What if Chris Rodriguez steps into the Brian Robinson Jr. role and it's not Austin Ekeler? And I think that is a possibility. So in some really deep best ball drafts, I have drafted Chris Rodriguez. And if you look at it on a per touch basis, he's actually been pretty stinking good in his NFL career. So I'm fading Austin Ekeler because I don't see the upside, even if injury were to strike in this offense.
And they weren't jumping out the bit to sign him. Like it was time had gone by. Austin Ekeler was playing the market, and we were waiting, and then they just said they got him. So
we need a guy to factor in here. Yeah. We need somebody that knows the system, is going to be a dependable veteran. You know, and
they're not excited.
No, it's not like they shelled out, like they didn't open the wallet for Austin Ekeler either.
One of the running backs that I had wanted to save, asking you guys about if you liked them over Javonte Williams, who's going in that range, is Devin Singletary, who's the next guy we're going to bring up. So, Debra, I'll start with you here. I'm curious if you're drafting or passing, Devin Singletary at RB29, 86th overall in consensus ADP. And also, I'm curious kind of where you see him in relation to a guy like Javonte, who's going in a similar range.
I look at Devin Singletary as... Again, it's funny that you layered the show this way because these are back-to-back my 2 most drafted running backs this entire offseason with Brian Robinson Jr. and Devin Singletary. Why are we ranking Devin Singletary as an RB3? I think the stink of the Giants offense has gone too far. Now, people have woken up because Malik Neighbors has made them wake up with all the highlights he's been dropping. But people are not waking up about Devin Singletary. And it's like, you could believe in Tyrone Tracy. I don't dislike Tyrone Tracy. He's in my perfect draft article on players to target. But you cannot sit here and tell me that you think truly that Tyrone Tracy is going to take the role if Devin Singletary stays healthy, that he's not going to be the clear workhorse. And we've seen this, like we saw this last year, boys. Like for Houston, when he was the starter, he was averaging almost 90 total yards per game. He was the RB21 in fantasy points per game. So really, I think my ranking for Devin Singletary is accurate. I have him as my RB21 in my rankings. So I don't understand, again, another player where volume and talent should match up, and the situation where he should be an RB2 in rankings, but he's not. So I'm just going to keep drafting more Devin Singletary. And yes, him and Brian Robinson Jr. will probably be my two highest exposure running backs throughout this draft season.
Debro, not only are you the highest among the Fantasy Pro staff in your Devin Singletary rankings, only 3 rankers in the entire expert consensus rankings on Fantasy Pros are higher. Somebody has him at RB19, 2 people have him at RB20, and then you have him at RB21. You are the 4th highest among every ranker we have on Singletary. So you are definitely kind of planting your flag on this one. What do you think, Terrell? Are you drafting Devin Singletary at RB29, 86th overall?
Absolutely. One, noted Giants fan here, so you can take what I say with a grain of salt. But by all accounts, since this regime of Dable and Shane have started, they have taken every opportunity they can to bring in anybody who even sniffed a Buffalo Bills jersey. I mean, they've taken every single chance. You watch the Hard Knocks, and they don't even call him by Devin. It's Motor Singletary. Motor. We love Motor. With all of the, I'm not even, screw the fantasy numbers. I'm talking to you as just somebody that watches football. Of everything that happened with Saquon Barkley last year, with the upgrades they made to the offensive line, with the fact that they want to prove that you don't have to pay a $12 million running back, they are going to give Devin Singletary every single opportunity to be good in this offense and become a 1,000-yard rusher because they want to prove they didn't need Saquon. They shouldn't have paid him the money. They should have used it for a Brian Burns, used it for all these other pieces instead of paying the running back. And it makes it so much better that we don't have a quarterback, because who else are you going to give the ball to? I mean, it's going to be Neighbors and Singletary in this offense, and I think that's going to be the offense. And I think it's going to be better than what it was last year. Maybe not great, but it's going to be good for fantasy. I think that this team, his coaching staff, loves this running back, and they're going to give him every single opportunity to succeed this season.
I mean, somebody poke some holes in Devin Singletary here, because I just keep looking at his profile and I'm like, why is consensus so low on him? Like, tell me what am I missing something here?
I have him lower than you do, certainly, because you're, like I said, among the highest. I don't have him drastically low. I do have him more in RB3 range than RB2. You're kind of talking me into it on the show. I always lose my my conviction when I do these shows, and I hear 2 very impassioned arguments for why I'm wrong on a player. I'm like, you know what? Maybe I probably am wrong. I just don't like guys typically, and this, I'm not saying, I don't like Singletary, but in general, I don't like guys who are older for the position and who haven't had that huge major breakout yet. That's why I say he's been bad. Obviously, he's had 800 rushing yards the last 3 years. It's not 1,000, but it's not nothing either. He's been an effective back. It just has always kind of felt like just a guy to me. But like I said, that's kind of where I was thinking coming into this. I'm not going to move him up to RB21, but you are swaying me here, Debro, with the argument that maybe, and Erickson has him RB31, Fitz has him RB31, Joey P has him RB30. That's right around where I am. I feel like maybe I want to get him into the 20s at least, even if I'm not quite up to top 24 range yet. Does that appease you a little?
Well, Worm, you never try to aim to sit here and make me happy about it. No. If anything, it's usually the opposite. But no, man, I think that anywhere in that the high 20s, I think I could wrap my head around it, because there's a lot of players in that range where really it kind of becomes a question of pick your flavor. Like, really, that's what it comes down to. And I just look at the value proposition, and I truly do think that if you took the team situation and you took the Giants out of this, okay, I really think that the stink of the franchise and how badly that it burned people in fantasy last year is weighing into this equation enough to where I think that that's really doing a lot of the heavy lifting, or at least like being the anchor pulling him down. Like, if you would have taken Devin Singletary and we would take the Giants out of this, and you said, we're throwing Devin Singletary into a team where hopefully middle of the road offensive line, probably not, probably somewhere in like the bottom 15, but improved offensive line, and a situation where he should be viewed as the clear lead back. If that wasn't the Giants that we were talking about and it just was another team, like, heck, put him on the Commanders. If you knew he was on the Commanders and same situation, but Austin Ekeler wasn't there and he was the clear guy, like, how would we feel about him there? Like, so I think the Giants stink around all these players, like Leak Neighbors, Devin Singletary.
Well,
I think that is pulling people down.
To your point, like, I am a believer in Brian Daboll, and like, I do think that the offense will be better this year. Like, Like, I think it's like a mental like stink on the Giants, but like sitting down and like thinking about it.
It's the offensive line. It's the offensive line. We
Everything that could have gone wrong went wrong.
There were grocery baggers that were literally going out there. Guys not even on the practice squad. I'm talking literally got up off the couch and went to go play offensive line for us last year because that's how hurt they were. And so they completely cleaned house. They bring in Carmen Brasillo, who is a great veteran, 20-year vet offensive line coach coming over from the Raiders, where they ran the football. They had things going. And look at the preseason. They kind of are flashing to you that they're going to be really good running the ball in that first preseason game against the Detroit Lions, where Eric Gray, 4 carries, 52 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground, and then he also caught 4 balls for 46. And Dante Miller, 12 carries, 63 yards, 5.3 yards per rush. Like, this offensive line looks better in scheme, and so when they get it settled down with the 5 personnel they're going to have, I think they're going to be very, very good, especially in the screen game. Like, I think that's where it's going to be the takeover for Devin Singletary, is in the screen game, where they're able to block better, and he's able to get a lot of more yards without seeing bodies in his face like everybody else did last year.
I absolutely love Terrell's instance, and you didn't name him by name, but you basically just described the wonderful Justin Pugh reference that you made in there of him coming off the couch and being in the starting lineup the next week. Very well done, sir.
Yeah, I mean, it's shout out Justin Pugh. Came through for he was good for us in a time, but in 2023, it was very rough to watch as a fan.
You guys have made the sale. I'm moving Singletary up. There are still names that are in that area that I do like better. Like, I do think I probably would lean closer towards Javonte. I definitely would take Brian Robinson over him. But like some of these other names in the area he's going currently, like Nick Chubb, Austin Ekeler, like Jonathan Brooks, like I would rather have Singletary than those guys.
Devin Singletary or DeAndre Swift?
Devin Singletary.
Singletary for me.
I have Swift ranked higher, but I would rather draft Singletary. Yes. So I probably need to change those rankings, actually.
I have Singletary over Pollard and Spears that I was talking earlier. I like, well, for sure over Spears, but over Pollard. Pollard's going above him. Like, I think Devin Singletary, again, is a back that nobody's looking at, but when you look at the end of the season, he's going to be an RB2, and people are going to be like, oh, crap, I didn't even realize, except his fantasy managers.
Yeah. All right, we got 2 more running backs to get through. Trey Benson is one of these names, somebody that I was very high on during rookie draft season, somebody who I really love the possible high upside in this offense. Hasn't been the best, camp for him in terms of some of the quotes coming out from Jonathan Gannon, and some of that shine is coming off Benson. I forgot to pull up the ADP, so let me get that up here before I ask you, Debro. Yeah, okay, so RB36, 107th overall in ADP right now. Are you drafting or passing on Trey Benson there?
I will draft him, but to your point, Worm, the stuff coming out of camp that Amari DiMercado and Michael Carter are also, like, this is not a clear, like, Benson has or already won or he's the front runner for the RB2 job on this team. that has given me some pause. So I've dropped him in my rankings. Like I had him in that kind of like mid-tier RB3. I've since dropped him to RB39 in my rankings, and I'm willing to draft him. But again, it kind of comes down to, it will be very specific about where he goes in said draft, because a lot of ADP on whether you're talking about host sites or just like in draft rooms in general, I don't think that people have really caught up to the training camp news of other names in that RB2 battle. So unfortunately, I think Trey Benson is still going kind of where he was to enter the offseason, and where we all were like, oh man, he's awesome, fantastic handcuff, probably standalone value, James Conner's going to miss time, blah, 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 blah. I don't think that like people are equating that enough into their rankings and into the ADP. So I'm willing to draft him, but unfortunately, I just don't know if it's going to catch up enough to week one to where all these later drafts, I'm going to get that much exposure to him. So, you know, his star has dimmed a little bit for me.
Sounds like you want to trade him to me in Dynasty.
Not for pennies, sir. Still waiting for the offer.
Terrell, Trey Benson, RB36, 107th overall. Are you drafting or passing?
So what's the reasoning behind drafting him? That's my question. Are you drafting him as a handcuff? Are you drafting him as standalone value? Are you drafting as somebody that, like, what is, because he's not over, there's no situation where he overtakes James Conner in his backfield.
No,
like
true.
that doesn't happen. So is this a handcuff play? Because if it is, I feel like in this range, there are a bunch of other handcuffs that I would just rather take my shot with, because if they are the guy, then they're going to be a lot better than what Trey Benson is for this offense. Like, we've seen so many times that James Conner's gone down and we've wanted a running back to emerge out of this offense, and maybe we got it for a week, maybe two, but it's never been anything long term. Like, if Bijan Robinson goes down, I have faith Tyler Algier is going to be a good running back. I would much rather draft Tyler Algier than a Trey Benson at this price. Like, Chuba Hubbard. Like, there's a Marshawn Lloyd. I mean, there's a number of backs around here that I'm just sitting here and I'm like, Jaleel McLaughlin is in this range. Like, I could see Jaleel McLaughlin actually taking the job. I just don't understand. Am I only drafting Benson as a handcuff? If it's only as a handcuff, there's other handcuffs that I would prefer.
I think it's a great point and a really important question to ask, like why you would be drafting, what your end game is with taking him. And, you know, during like in May, when we were talking a lot about these rookies and their landing spots and thinking about it from a dynasty perspective, it was really easy to paint the narrative of James Conner, another year older, like, you know, maybe back half of the year, Benson looks like a league winner in what should be an ascending offense. It just doesn't seem like it's played out that way so far. There's still time for that to change, of course. And like, to your point, I just don't think James Conner is giving up this role, certainly not this season, barring an injury. So he is, I think, probably like an upside. And like, even looking at the rookie running backs, I think I'd rather have Blake Corum if we're looking at them as strictly, you know, handcuffs and what they would do if there was an injury. So I think it's a great point.
As Terrell was making the case here, like I was like, man, that's a really good case. And he's right. He's right. Like if you're looking at like clear handcuff situations, like I'm staring at my running back rankings as Terrell's making the points. And I'm like, why do I have Trey? Like I just made like I just poo-pooed the case for Trey Benson. I'm like, why do I have him above Blake Corum? Why do I have him above Zach Charbonnet? So live on air, like
Dobbins.
I mean, like, I don't hate that at all, man. Like I just moved him down from 104th to 122nd in my ranks behind both Corum and Charbonnet. And I think people should be drafting both Charbonnet and definitely Corum above him. So Trey Benson is now, I mean, I said it a second ago, like he was my RB39. I've dropped him to my RB42.
I think he should be in that RB4 range. He should not be up in that like back end RB3 range.
Like, what's the difference between drafting Trey Benson and even like, should Khalil Herbert even be over him? Like, should Ray Davis be over him at this point? Like, you can make really good cases for both of those guys as well to be over Benson, because I feel like the more we've talked about this and the more the camp news has come out, this is one of those situations where we were so sure that we knew who the handcuff is in this backfield. And as news has come out, we might be tragically wrong about that, and we need to adjust.
Yeah.
Terrell just mentioned in naming some of these other running backs, J.K. Dobbins. You guys are lucky I didn't include him because I felt like I had talked about Dobbins enough on this show this summer as like if he's healthy, he's just a no doubt about it league winner in my opinion. And he looks pretty healthy so far. So I'm really excited for the J.K. Dobbins assance, and I want to see him like smash this year, even though he's not in Baltimore anymore. But I did include one of his backfield mates, Gus Edwards, who people are searching for a lot on the site, who does fall into this category, who is going highest of these Chargers running backs. And, there's been some discouraging comments, and from the beat reporters, predictions about Kamani Vidal. And so really people were thinking about it as like Gus, Vidal, and Dobbins, and is looking a little bit more like Gus and Dobbins. And, I'd prefer Dobbins going later just because he's going later. And I think the upside is even higher, again, if healthy, which is a huge if that is carrying a lot of weight in that sentence. And I totally get if people are unwilling to take that risk. Having said that, I want to ask about Gus Edwards because we've talked so much about Vidal during rookie draft season. And because we've talked so much about Dobbins as a league winner, Gus Edwards is the guy who's going earliest of that group and is maybe getting the most overlooked because people kind of see him, I think, as more of a floor play than a ceiling play. He was really good in Baltimore and really efficient, but he had the, added value of being in the backfield with Lamar Jackson, who makes everybody look efficient. What will he look like with Justin Herbert or, God forbid, Easton Stick in Los Angeles if Herbert misses any time? Obviously they're still going to want to run the ball with Greg Roman, and he can design a really good run game, I think, even without a mobile quarterback. That's all just kind of a preface to ask you, Debro, like Gus Edwards, he's ranked RB 36. Currently, his ADP is RB 38, 112th overall. Like, if Dobbins really is like kind of just never coming back to full health, and Vidal really doesn't make the team, like some beat reporters suggested, this may be way too low on Gus.
It might be, but I'm fine with it. I'm fine being wrong on this situation. I really am. Gus, I have as RB 44 right now, and I'm more likely to draft J.K. Dobbins if taking a shot at this backfield because, yes, everything about Kamani Vidal this offseason has not been great. Jared Patterson is looking like he's going to be the RB3. Now, I do think that there's some context that we're missing because the Chargers haven't been just out there screaming and heavily reporting all their injuries. I'm not saying they're hiding anything or anything like that. But Jim Harbaugh has been saying, okay, well, hey, so-and-so got banged up. He's missing practice. And we're getting like small little reports like where guys miss practice, things happen. But maybe like we're not getting, oh, he pulled a hamstring and blah, 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 blah on certain players. But with Gus Edwards specifically, I have a hard time envisioning a scenario where if I don't draft him, that he burns me. Like that's the part where it's like, he's not going to catch passes. We know that. His efficiency last year just straight up sucked. And I look at this backfield and I'm willing to take a shot on J.K. Dobbins super late, depending on where he goes. But to be honest, in most scenarios, I'm just fading this backfield at this point, just in its totality. Because what we could see out of this backfield as well, what if the work doesn't go to one player? What if the work is divided up between Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins? There's not a ton of pass game volume to even care about because they're just not throwing the ball a ton. So even if we want to say, oh, Herbert will check down, he's done that before. Well, none of these guys are prolific pass catchers, and there might not be that much passing game volume to be had anyway. I kind of see this backfield really like it could dissolve into you've got 2 to 3 running backs that are getting anywhere between 8 and 12 touches per game, no pass game or minimal pass game involvement. And then it comes down to it's a bet on the offense and how many touchdowns they're going to score. I don't think anybody's going to go out there and tell you the Chargers are a top 12 offense this year at all. So then it's really just, does any one of these running backs absolutely burn me if I fade them in my rankings and I don't draft them? I just don't see it. So you can count me out on Gus, take some shots on JK, but probably not a ton. I'm just more or less out on this backfield at this point.
I mean, to me, the upside case is if you are somebody who believes that the injury stuff is just too much for J.K. Dobbins to overcome. So you're kind of largely taking him out of the equation, which I'm not doing, by the way. I would prefer to draft Dobbins over Gus. Again, I'm all in on J.K. this year. But if you are that type of person, who is going to take rushing touchdowns away from Gus in this offense? I mean, even if they don't score a ton of them, like the equity of whatever the rushing touchdowns they score are, a huge percentage of that I think is going to be Gus if Dobbins is not, largely in the picture and taking those from him. So if you want to fade his health, then I do think Gus makes sense, as there is an upside case in that scenario. If Dobbins is healthy, I don't think there's an upside case. And I think it'll be maybe a frustrating backfield, or it will be not frustrating and it'll just be clearly Dobbins. I don't think Gus will outperform a healthy Dobbins.
So say Gus has the goal line roll. Say he has that locked up, Worm. What's your median projection for his rushing touchdowns then in the context of this offense? 6.5, maybe 6.5, and that could be kind of generous.
I mean, I guess to my point would be, if I'm building an upside case, I'm not painting it. I'm not including what his median case is. I'm looking at the
okay, what's his upside case then? What's his high end?
I think
double digits. Are you really think it's double digits?
He had 13 last year.
In upside
That's
case,
for Baltimore though. That's not for the Chargers.
Well, sure, but
let me make this case.
Yeah.
Let me make this case, because the thing about Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins and what people are forgetting is that you got to think of this as sibling things. When you're the older sibling, you hand me down and pass them down to the younger sibling and say, hey, matter of fact, hey, this offensive coordinator wasn't working out for me anymore because I'm tired of him. Our offense wasn't doing anything with Lamar Jackson. And so I'm getting rid of Greg Roman, but you can have him. That's fine. You can take him. Hey, matter of fact, don't only just take Greg Roman, take both running backs that we had in his system too. They're going to be great for you. And you know what? Just to give you a little hint too, when I had both of those running backs and that offensive coordinator, J.K. Dobbins was the starter. And J.K. Dobbins was the one that I put the trust in and gave him the touches at the goal line. And J.K. Dobbins had the fantasy relevant season while the other one was stuck in the RB50s. So if this is the sibling chatter and all of this, and what reasoning does Harbaugh have to go away from what's been working for Greg Roman's offense? Greg Roman's offense has been predicated on running the football with a good offensive line, and he has said that J.K. Dobbins' skill set has been his RB1 skill set. He gives him the ball whenever he's healthy. When J.K. Dobbins has played, he's been an excellent running back for Greg Roman. It should be the same thing. I think there's no path that I'm with you, Worm. There's no path that Gus Edwards is relevant if J.K. Dobbins is healthy, because J.K. Dobbins is going to easily emerge as the number one in this offense because he's shown it to you multiple times in the same offense. It's just a different big brother. Now you got little brother.
Dobbins is the guy. I think we would all agree, if we're drafting one of them, especially at cost, I want Dobbins, and I want him in a lot of leagues, for more so than Debro even wants him. I want J.K. Dobbins with my final pick in as many drafts as I can make that happen. I do think though, Debro, that if Dobbins is not healthy, they're going to run the ball every time they're up close. And you have Justin Herbert as your quarterback. I think that the offense will not be as bad as people are painting it out to be. And if Edwards is getting every single carry inside the 5, I absolutely think the upside case, I'm not going to draft him as if he's going to score 10 touchdowns. I think the upside case is that he could get there because of who this coaching staff is and because of who the quarterback is and because of how they want to operate. So I think again, Dobbins needs to be hurt for that to happen, but I think there's an upside case there.
I just look at this as going to be an offense that's going to run incredibly slow, and they're going to try to strangle time of possession. So
also fair.
It's going to limit some scoring opportunities and just play volume overall. So, I mean, again, especially now that we're talking about Justin Herbert is also less than 100%. Yep. God, it just adds even more volatility. Dude, if Easton Stick is starting some games, just count me out. Count me out. But that team projection for point total is going to be 14 points, maybe less if he's starting.
It's a huge factor. Yes,
if I take Gus Edwards, I have to draft J.K. Dobbins. That's not a upside play at this point. If I take Gus Edwards, I absolutely have to draft J.K. Dobbins.
Yeah, I think I need a discount on Gus Edwards to get him, but I see the upside case. And I'm going to be aggressive in getting Dobbins before his ADP. So, and that's kind of how I'm approaching the backfield is I would prefer to wait for Dobbins. If I get a discount on Gus, great. I want to make sure I get Dobbins though, and I know that's a little more aggressive than you feel, D-Bro, but I do think there's opportunity here for one of them, and I just love the talent. All right, that was great. We got through a lot of names here, so we will go ahead and wrap up there. Thank you everybody for tuning in, and again, just as one last reminder, please tune in to our Fantasy Fest. I mean, it's a super fun time. We've done them the last few years. This is our 5th annual one. D-Bro and I have been a part of them for a while. Terrell will be on there as well. And that's Monday, August 19th. So join us. We'll have a really good time for 5 straight hours of some fun fantasy chatter, and you can get your questions answered. And yeah, please be sure to check that out. For Terrell and D-Bro, I'm Ryan Wormeli. Thank you again for tuning in. We'll see you again next time.